What the hell has Notre Dame done? We're on national television. Georgia missed out on the playoffs, and we're the reigning two-time national champions. We mentioned Notre Dame more than them. Stephen A. Smith was fully bothered uh, on his show on ESPN on I think it was Wednesday morning, talking about the Dogs, Irish, everybody in college football, and what has Notre Dame done? The answer to that is not a lot in the grand scheme of things. It's better than it used to be, but not a lot. And he was talking about narratives that we have in college football. I don't think you have to mention Notre Dame all the time. I don't think. I mean, I listen. Notre Dame is a top 15 program. They're perfectly fine. Are they more important than Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama? No, definitely not. Are they a bigger deal than Auburn? I mean, I think they're a bigger deal than Auburn, but I don't know that they're drastically a bigger deal than any major SEC school. And I think that's the problem right now, um, in the grand scheme of things, is the SEC specifically and Michigan and Ohio State acutely have separated themselves from the rest of college football in a way that we shouldn't have to talk about Notre Dame. I mean, I don't. It doesn't bother me to mention this sort of stuff, but Notre Dame is sort of my father's generation of college football. You talk about 1988 national championship with Lou Holtz, who is just a complete whack job, and always has been. But you know, that is 36 years ago. Georgia's won two of the last three national championships. The SEC has won all but what two since 2015, and I don't know how many. Maybe all but four since 2006, maybe something like that. I mean, it's the sport has changed. It's regionalized. It's gone away from the Midwest, generally speaking, to the South. And if we're being really honest about college football, Notre Dame doesn't really fit in the discussion for winning the national championship, and have not for a long time. And this is not just going to be to run Notre Dame down. I've been up there. It is very nice. The campus is nice. South Bend is okay at best, but the campus is nice. The stadium is gorgeous. They treat you well. I mean, Notre Dame, there's a lot to be admired there, but they have allowed themselves to be lapped. They're choosing not to win. People want to talk about academics and all this stuff. There's academics at SC. There's academics at Stanford, places that have had success, flash in the pan success, if you want to call it, at Stanford. But look, are you want to do this or not, or do you want to talk about you want to sound like Georgia Tech? If you're a national power, which I think Notre Dame was at one time. Okay, but in the last 12 years, these teams have been watched more than Notre Dame. Okay, Bama, Ohio State, Georgia. I would imagine Clemson at this stage. Clemson probably still has more than Notre Dame, but that could be close. Michigan does for sure. Notre Dame. I mean, they were discussing the Cowboys. I would say it's worse than that. I mean, in my lifetime, I remember the Cowboys being a dominant franchise, a group of teams that were unbelievable. I don't ever remember that with Notre Dame. I mean, even in 88, 88, 89, 90 until maybe 93, something like that. They were one of the best five programs. That was for a 5-year period. What have they done since 1993? Not a lot. Not a lot. I mean, they played for the national championship in 2012, which was a total con job because the best two teams in the country played in the SEC championship that year. I still remember Urban Meyer getting up there like the fat liar that he is and saying that Notre Dame was going to win that game. What a clown. Total clown. There was no chance Notre Dame had of beating Alabama in that game, and the final score proved it. The difference between the SEC schools globally and Notre Dame is I think that the SEC schools are genuinely interested in winning. I think Notre Dame is genuinely interested in being Notre Dame. And there's, again, you know, Notre Dame is not serious about winning in football. Now, are they in other sports? Man, it used to seem like in basketball that has spiraled out of control away from them and has lately. I think that I think as I look at it right now, it's hard to say, oh yeah, no matter why do you think Brian Kelly left there? Because he knows he couldn't win a national championship there. He's they I wouldn't say they stand no chance of winning a national championship, but they are in a better position than South Carolina and Arkansas, but they're not in a better position than Florida State and Auburn and LSU and Oklahoma and Michigan, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, Bama. I would even say those losers at Penn State have a better shot of winning a national championship than Notre Dame, because at least at Penn State they might have a ridiculous head coach, but they want to win. I think it's really lip service at Notre Dame, and like, again, I'm saying that in the least judgmental way. I understand this stuff. I've covered college football for a quarter century, and that quarter century, Notre Dame's never mattered. They just haven't. I mean, you talking about in 12? That's it. They got into the playoff one year. They had no business being in it. They got into the playoff the other year because they, beat Clemson at home, COVID year. I mean, they're a disaster in big games. SC Notre Dame is a great rivalry, but so is Georgia Tech. Like, I mean, it doesn't mean they're both good teams. So I think, to Stephen A's question and point, well, then talk about Georgia and Bama, and I mean, like, they for me, in my opinion, people don't talk about Notre Dame as much as maybe they're people think we talk about Notre Dame. I think that Alabama has absolutely dominated conversation in college football for about 15 years, and that's slowly changing. I think Ohio State, understandably, Ohio State and Bama, and now Georgia, they have dominated the talk because they're really good teams, they're really good programs, and a lot of people watch them. Here, I'll put this on the screen. Now, this data is 2 years old, but this was heading into the 2022 season. So, in other words, Georgia's won another national championship in this time, and so some of these numbers, well, all of these numbers are wrong as it relates to 2023 and 2022. But for the 10 years, between 12 and 21, this is the data. Well, we know that some of this is skewed because of national championship appearances. For instance, Alabama is the only team with over 1 billion views in that time. Okay, and that they are unequivocally, to me, the number one brand in college football as it relates to viewership. It's undisputable. No one thinks Clemson's a bigger brand than Georgia. So they had played in, I think, 3 or 4 national championship games. Georgia had played in 2 in this time. So the numbers, I can tell you with authority, Georgia has gone past Clemson by a lot in these last 2 years. Notre Dame, you see there at 461 million viewers in a 10-year period. The problem for Notre Dame is they don't play big games anymore, because what's happened is SC sucks and has sucked for a while here, and the ACC just doesn't, outside of Clemson and Florida State, they just don't have teams that are brands in any way. It would do Notre Dame just as much good to play Nebraska as it would to be in the ACC. But like, if you look at these numbers here, this is based in reality. Okay, so number 7 and 17 are coming into the SEC. So you just look down this list: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the top 10 teams are going to be either Big Ten or SEC teams. Okay, and you keep rolling on from there. I mean, just in the SEC alone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the top 10 are SEC franchises, and number 11 is one as well. So what's going to happen here over time is that Notre Dame is going to continue to struggle to doggy paddle their way to relevancy. No one watches them play. That's another problem. Is like, for instance, Georgia Tennessee. That's a much bigger game than the vast majority of Notre Dame games. You know, SC is probably bigger than Georgia Tennessee. I'm not sure by how much, but probably not. And Georgia Tennessee is not one of Georgia's giant games. It's a big game. Like, you know, when you compare Georgia's games with the Gators, anytime they play Alabama, anytime they play Auburn, those are bigger games than Georgia Tennessee traditionally. Well, who does Notre Dame play? That's another real problem. Who is it that they're playing? Like, opening up against Georgia Tech in Dublin, Ireland is really neat and sounds great, but like, they're making mistakes around the board to me. Get serious about winning. Like, really want to win and go all out in winning. Quit using the excuse of academics. I know a lot of Notre Dame folks, they're tired of that. It's not a real thing anyway. I mean, well, I'm sure it is a real thing, but like, everybody's kids go to class. So, you know, saying, "Oh, well, we lost the game, but we're better at academics." No one cares. It's irrelevant. That's what losers say. So, and then you start talking about Notre Dame's situation in the college football landscape, which is that they, you know, are an independent. They think they're special. They act like they're special, and in many ways, they're given special things. But that's hurting them now. I mean, like, that's really damaging the brand, in my opinion, of Notre Dame. It's letting teams like Auburn be in the same stratosphere as Notre Dame. And I don't think anybody at Notre Dame would consider Auburn a peer. Okay. But, you know, and then you look at the success of Ohio State and Michigan this last 10 years. It's hard to say Notre Dame's had that sort of success because, factually speaking, Ohio State and Michigan have both won the national championship in the last 10 seasons. Notre Dame has not. They have not played for a national championship. Every time they have gone to the semifinal, they have gotten their asses raked. So, you know, or even in the national championship game in 12, which was 12 years ago, you know, they're not there. So why aren't you talking more about Georgia? I don't know, but I can assure you that you will be. Not just because Georgia is going to be really good, but because it is in Stephen A's business's interest to do so. It will be less so in their interest to talk about the Irish. I will say the one thing that nobody else really, I mean, that this sort of, I wouldn't say, the word haunts comes into mind, but I think Notre Dame likes it. Them not being in a league is damaging at this point. I mean, the fiduciary responsibility of the athletic department and the board of whatever they call it up there. We're called a board of trustees. You could be a board of whatever. I don't know what a Catholic school would be called in that situation, but the Notre Dame contract with NBC is coming up pretty soon, and if they don't get a monster contract from NBC, they are really hurting themselves being independent. They could join any league. The SEC would be glad to have Notre Dame. I can vouch for you and assure you with certainty that the SEC would take Notre Dame in a split second. And that would create a lot of revenue that Notre Dame does not currently have. Okay. With that said, that is not being in a league is no longer, to me, an advantageous thing. They will never get a bye into the quarterfinals, the college football playoff. That will never happen for Notre Dame. They've agreed to that never happening. I think it's bad, but you know, as it relates to why Stephen A, because Notre Dame triggers people. I mean, it's so dumb. I think it's dumb personally. In the South, a lot of people hate Notre Dame. And I think a lot of people, I mean, I can only speak to the South really, but I think a lot of people around the country don't like Notre Dame. Maybe that's an anti-Catholic bias. I don't know. But, you know, for a lot of Catholics, Notre Dame is their college football team. For a lot of folks in the Northeast, Notre Dame is their football team. In the Midwest, the same way. You know, everywhere you go, there are Notre Dame folks. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be hard for them to keep up if they don't assimilate into a conference at some point. They're not going to be able to do this alone. And, you know, NBC, Universal, Comcast, They are not going to float this thing forever. The fact of the matter is, with the occasional, USC home game, Notre Dame just doesn't play big games, and that's a real problem if you are the rights holder for the league. I mean, every year, think about Georgia's schedule just this year alone. It's going off the top of my head. Might miss one. They play Tennessee. They play Clemson. They play the Gators. Of course, they do that every year. They play Texas. They play Alabama, and I'm forgetting someone, I'm sure. That's 5 what I would call huge games. I will look right now at Notre Dame's schedule in 2024. I can assure you they don't play that many good games. They just don't. And they have the capability to, by the way. They play at A&M. They play Florida State. And they play SC. That's it. And they don't play in a championship game. And they don't play a lot of bad games, but they don't play any, like, no one cares about Purdue. No one cares about Purdue. No one cares about Navy. No one cares about Louisville. No one cares about Stanford. No one cares about Georgia Tech. I didn't say a word about Georgia Tech, Georgia. I mean, they just don't. And they're playing Navy and Army in the same season. Now, they play this game at the Bronx. They're playing at Yankee Stadium. They're playing at MetLife. They're playing at Mercedes-Benz. They're playing in all these neat places. But if no one's watching the game, then who cares? And that's just, Georgia plays in the Rose Bowl. Georgia plays at Mercedes-Benz. I mean, like, it doesn't matter. And I think that's the problem for Notre Dame is, when are they going to start playing games that matter? And that's when you'll start seeing. But in terms of, why don't we talk about, that's a Stephen A. question. I mean, to me, they should be talking about Georgia, Bama, LSU more than they talk about Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame doesn't matter, and they haven't in a long time.